Okay, our next speaker is Roy Mulder, who's going to be talking about trying to organize scientists, I think.
Yes.
Yes, well, good luck with that.
So I haven't got any pretty graphs or pictures or anything else. I'm here to talk about kind of a cat herding expedition. Essentially, we're facing the UN Convention for Biological Diversity coming up in 2010 or 20, and we're still talking about it, but we're barely talking about it. Now, I'd like to do a little show of hands. How many people in this room are directly working on any programming to create marine protected areas of any sort? How many people in this room? Okay, so maybe what, about 3% of this room? How many people in this room would like to see marine sanctuaries in Canada? Okay, so the vast majority of us would like to go there. Now, the challenge we have is Canada has probably one of the biggest coastlines of any country in the entire world, and we protect 1.3% of it fully. That's the number. A lot of people don't realize it. They hear a lot of terms that say marine sanctuary. You hear terms that say marine reserve. You can look at something like rockfish conservation areas. There's a lot of different terms and a lot of things that imply protection, but there's very few that actually are full protection. I mean, we can look at larger areas. We can look at smaller areas. I do a lot of, I'm not a scientist, but I go to a lot of the conferences and everything else, and the takeaway that I've taken from that is, if we're going to protect the ocean and we're going to create protected areas, we have to protect probably 20 to 30% of the area, and large areas and large swaths. This isn't happening. Canada has just gone through a very dark time in advocacy and creating protections. We've seen some things happen. I've been part of a group protecting sponges. You think it's hard to protect charismatic animals like whales and dolphins, try and protect sponges. And this is the thing. And what happens is, you know, we talk a lot about protecting things, but we do it from a species point of view, and we see a lot of speciesism out there. There's a lot of conservation groups that are out there. They're the shark group, and they don't want shark finning, and they want to protect sharks. We have another group, they want to protect pinnipeds. We have another, well, mind you, I don't know if there's any groups protecting pinnipeds. Is there? Maybe, but nonetheless, what happens is people get very focused in one area. But if you take a look at any single species, and if anything else to take away from this room today is the fact that you walk out of here and you know everything's connected to everything else. When you're protecting one species, you can't say, oh, I'm going to protect one species and not protect the habitat and the creatures that it survives off of. And so, you know, in a world today where all of a sudden krill has suddenly become a really neat health food. So this is now going to threaten whales. You know, you have to look at how it's all connected. So how are we going to connect all these organizations? So we got 3% in this room. These are the people I want to talk to, who by all means talk to me after this. How do we join us all together to work towards one common goal? And I think that that's how it has to be done. If we all appreciate that we're looking at all these various different facets of it, but for us to actually become inclusive and get that 10% of Canada, we have to be talking about that now. It's 2016 almost, and we're saying 2020 we're going to set this area of Canada aside, but I'm not seeing the dialogue happening yet. And so I'm here standing here today saying, we have to start creating this dialogue and saying, it's all well and good to spend your lifetime as a scientist studying these things, but I've got friends who are working on vaquitas right now, and they're sitting there and they're going to watch what they've been studying get studied until the last one in the species goes. And this is what we have to be concerned about. And if we're going to protect everything, we've got to start talking to each other, and we have to find a common, simple goal. And I think that that's where we fail. I think we get too much into the complexity of things. We also don't realize just how much is gone. 9/10 of the world's big fish are gone. That's a fairly common number that everybody's using. Recent studies have seen that, you know, we've almost lost 50% of our fish stocks from 1970. I mean, those are very frightening statistics, and especially when the creatures you're studying are the very ones that are surviving off of these other creatures. So there's an incentive for all of us to join together and say, let's create this area. Where is it, and what does it look like? And how can we do it in an effective way so that we're protecting all the species rather than any individual one? And this is where it becomes very difficult, because they all seem to hang out in different areas. I mean, I can only look at my own little backyard. I dive every weekend. I'm in Howe Sound almost every weekend scuba diving. I've been diving 42 years. I used to go out and I'd see a school of rockfish. I am hard-pressed to say that I can find a school of rockfish in Howe Sound anymore. I can tell you where there's one, but if I did, it'd go away. Then if we speak towards that aspect of it, rockfish conservation areas were invented so that we would protect rockfish, but they allow all sorts of other forms of predation. So if you're going to allow seining in a rockfish conservation area, you know, you're going to get bycatch, and it's kind of defeating the purpose kind of thing. If you create these protected areas without enforcement, and that's the other thing, we can talk all we want about protection, but if we're not talking about the enforcement aspect of this, it's not going to work. I mean, the RCAs, when they created them, it was a great idea, but then next thing we discovered was they put them onto charts, and the next thing that happened after that was poachers got a hold of the charts and they became targeted. So all of a sudden we've created these protected areas, but we've identified the areas, which is probably the biggest mistake we made, and then it became a poaching area because there's not enough enforcement. And I talk to the people, you know, who work at DFO and they're working on it. I think we need to make sure that any plan that we have includes enforcement, but we need as many organizations to join together. So I would like to ask if anyone's interested in joining me and my organizations with this task. That's Marine Life Sanctuary Society, Canadian Marine Environment Protection Society, World Cetacean Alliance. I'm members of all three. By all means, look me up, find me, help us. We can use it.